overall, we've seen both extremes when it comes to the NFL playoffs this season. The wild card round was pretty much a dud as a NFL fan. All but one game, being Rams and Lions, was for the most part a blowout. Games that weren't really that close. Pittsburgh and Buffalo got a little close at the end, but it was never really ever a question that Buffalo was going to win. And even if you look at the years in the past, last 5, 6, 7 years, the conference championship games have not always shown out to be the two best teams in that conference. Or at least the two best teams didn't show up that particular day. This year is not one of those years. Immediate reaction to the AFC and NFC championship games that happened yesterday. First word is just wow. We really got a good product, especially out of the NFC championship game, which I'll get to second. We really got a good product out of the games. They were both thoroughly entertaining for the most part. The Kansas City game, the final score is a little more misleading than you would like to believe if you didn't really watch the whole game. It wasn't a blowout by any means, but Baltimore definitely didn't show up, at least especially not compared to the week prior. We'll start with that game. First reaction is, what happened to Baltimore's offense? I did pick Kansas City to win this game going in, and for the simple reasons I stated in that 60-second video, were just the experience that Mahomes, Reed, and the Chiefs have in the playoffs was going to vault them to the victory. Ultimately, we saw that. We saw Travis Kelce break basically all of Jerry Rice's playoff records for receptions, catches, touchdowns, yards, all that jazz. And the Chiefs just thoroughly looked like they were in control for a good portion of that game. They came out hot, scored a couple drives. The Ravens came out hot, 4-play drive, their first drive of the game, with a deep touchdown pass. And it really looked like we were in store for a shootout of epic proportions, 70-point total, all that kind of jazz. And like a light switch, the Ravens just shut down. And little did anybody know that would be basically the last points they scored until the very end of the game. And I think all year long, Kansas City's defense has been underrated. A lot of the opponents they played against, people didn't really give a lot of credit to. The AFC West was weak again, so it was easy to say, oh, well, yeah, they look good against bad competition. But the KC defense, in particular, the last few years in the playoffs, has really shown up and got them wins in which they didn't have business winning in some situations. I think everybody could agree this is the worst Kansas City team we've seen in a number of years. This is a team that, if everybody was going to pick, this is the year that they weren't going to do this. And they have superseded all expectations, and they thoroughly showed the world that Baltimore had weaknesses, and they exposed them on the biggest stage they could. Lamar Jackson, for all the great things he did during the regular season, once again in the playoffs, in the biggest game, he just fizzled out. I don't know. Numerous underthrows, numerous overthrows. The late pick in the third quarter, I think it was, maybe it was the fourth, that he threw into triple coverage in the end zone. I mean, I don't even know what he saw. The internet has pointed out that there was some PI potentially on it. But either way, whether it was a PI or not, it was a terrible decision, unless his entire goal was to hope to get a flag out of it. But it was an absolutely terrible throw. The receiver never really had a shot to get it. It was a Hail Mary, for lack of a better word. It was the fourth quarter, now that I'm thinking about it. It was about 6 minutes ago. And it was just absolutely a terrible decision. And numerous times throughout the game, he just looked like he was very off-kilter and just wasn't himself. You saw, especially towards the wind down of the final minutes of the game, his emotions really got to him, and he was throwing stuff, and you could see that he was disappointed in himself, if not everybody else. But it's now shown another year that Lamar in the playoffs is just not the same player. And Can he overcome that? I certainly hope so. He's a hell of a player to watch, and he's a blast to watch when he's doing great things. He's still the best player of the weekend, in my opinion, throwing a pass to himself. I mean, not very often do you scream out loud in a public place, but I said "whoa" pretty loudly when I watched that happen. That was pretty crazy, and a great awareness by him to see the ball in the air and spot it and take it down. But ultimately, as I said, as the game went on, the offense just completely went flat, and it ultimately just ended up being what Kansas City rode until the final minutes of the game. It just Baltimore did not show up on offense, and it's disappointing. A lot of people wanted to see the Baltimore-Detroit Super Bowl, and we all got the exact opposite. I did pick Detroit to win as well, and I'll get to that game again in a minute here. But just to see the way Kansas City showed up, it even superseded the expectations that I had, and I picked them to win. I did not expect them to show up and look that good on the defensive side of the football, and I think that bodes very well for them moving into the Super Bowl. Now we'll dive into the other game, Detroit and San Francisco. What a tale of two halves. For anybody that didn't watch the game, you missed a hell of a meltdown by one team, I guess, and resurgence by the other. Although I don't even really want to call it that. The Lions just thoroughly came out and played their best football early. They attacked big on the first drive, and they continued to take it to the Niners throughout the first half, all the way down till the final minutes where they decided to kick a field goal. When everybody kind of expected them to be aggressive and go for it, they kicked a field goal and made it a 17-point game going into the locker room. Very smart decision. And San Francisco just had no answers at that first half. And something happened, locker room adjustments, whatever you might want to credit it to. But a completely different Niners team showed up in the second half, as did a completely different Detroit team. Detroit's offense came out incredibly flat in the second half, could not move the ball, a couple of turnovers, got stopped on fourth down on the first drive that they had out of the half, in field goal range, and the Niners just took advantage of every opportunity. Every turnover they got points off of, every possession they got points off of. They just ripped the Lions' heart and dreams and everything apart with each possession that went by. And that's a huge credit to Kyle Shanahan and whoever it is that led the charge on the halftime adjustments. That team wanted it more in the second half. And for Detroit, I mean, ultimately the deciding factor of this game, in hindsight, is always 20/20, but the deciding factor of this game is Dan Campbell. Like, I'm sorry, but you have to have that awareness, and it's easy to do this from a couch or a car, or, call me what you will, but you have to have that awareness as the head coach and as the leader of this franchise right now to just know when to take the points. And Detroit was, as I just said, came out incredibly flat in the second half, couldn't move the ball, couldn't seem to game plan anything to beat that San Francisco and 49ers defense, and yet they had two opportunities in the second half in field goal range to kick a field goal, or at least attempt one. I know not all field goals are gimmies, but to at least attempt, to get three on the board, and they bypassed both of them. The first one's a little more understandable. It was early in the third, and they still had a pretty big lead, so it's understandable to say they wanted to keep adding to that lead. But to me, that second one, when you have the ball and it's less than half the fourth quarter to go, and you just got overtaken for the lead for the first time, and now you're down by 3, and you're at I think it was like 30-yard line, just about there, and you don't take the points. I mean, I understand that being aggressive is what got you here, and I understand that's what you've rode for the entire season, but to not take the points in that situation, I knew as a fan at home, I knew immediately upon them failing that fourth down that San Francisco was going to score a touchdown. And it was just because of the momentum and the way that the game had went in the second half. San Francisco was taking advantage of every single opportunity they had. and the Lions defense had no answer for him. So as soon as they went for that fourth and failed, I knew the game was going to be over. And it hurts a lot for Lions fans because you get down and you score a touchdown, and then that 3 is what the difference was. So ultimately, that game came down to Dan Campbell and the decision that he made. But that's pretty much what I got. And you guys, check me out on the next one. And I'll be posting one for the Super Bowl soon. So see you in the next one, guys. Thanks.